Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about gay men and discipline, the secret weapon for achieving your goals. So I'd like to start this episode just by admitting I've been procrastinating making this episode, which shows exactly why it needs to be talked about. You know, how many of you have done the same? You think about doing something, you know it would be valuable towards some goal to do it, you want to do it, and yet you find yourself not doing it, even though you should, and by the time you get around to doing it, you could have had it done by now. So, as crazy-making as that ironic, circular logic can be, it has importance to life in order to achieve the goals we want. And we all want something in either our personal or our professional lives. And this is what I've been helping gay men with for over 28 years as a gay men's specialist, psychotherapist, and life, career, relationship coach, and trained sex therapist. Being a certain way, doing certain things, and even having certain things or certain experiences is what goal setting and quality of life are about. They are existential issues that make life worth living. And yet most of us live with this permanent dichotomy between what we think we should be doing to achieve various goals and what we actually do. The difference is the word discipline, short for self-discipline. Discipline is really holding ourselves to our own standards and accountability, living with fidelity and integrity to an ongoing set of behaviors that we have chosen for ourselves as free, autonomous, consenting adults. The challenge is absolute faith to our own values and goals through discipline is always wanted, but only rarely fully achieved. We battle the enemies of discipline daily. There are many: distraction, impulsivity, inattentiveness, fatigue, feeling conflicted about competing needs or even desires, interruption, shifting priorities, undermining our own confidence, the Imposter Syndrome, negative self-talk, criticism, pessimism, anxiety, depression, ignorance, resentment, despair, hedonism, indulgence. Any or all of these and more can undermine the discipline that we wish we had or that we wish we had more of. So how do we resolve these, the conflicts, often between immediate gratification or even a sustained comfort versus finding ourselves engaging in behaviors that are goal-directed and may even have a short-term investment of pain for a long-term gain of accomplishment, some of which are permanent, such as getting an educational degree or achieving a professional credential or some other goal or hobby, a project that's completed or some kind of chore that's done or even something big like accomplishing something that takes many years of effort to achieve. So in my weekly or sometimes bi-weekly sessions with clients in either therapy or coaching, my practice offers both services, as well as couples work, consulting, expert witness services, speaking, teaching, etc. We are almost always discussing improving quality of life by changing something about the way we think or behave in service to a goal. Someone who doesn't earn enough wants to cultivate ways to earn more money. Someone with an unhappy relationship wants to learn what can be changed to have a happier one. Someone who lacks the job they want can learn strategies for getting another one. Someone who is burdened by anxiety and wants to know the pathway to relief. Someone with an unsatisfying sex life wants to cultivate a different way of being and interacting as a sexual being. All of these are goals which require changes in thinking and behaving and relating in order to shift from one set of existential circumstances to another. In other words, to change your life by changing these things. And it's usually about how you think, how you behave, and how you relate, including to yourself. The complaints about the enemies of discipline that make us think we want to act one way but somehow end up acting another way are many, as I said. And they all need specific ways to fight back and reclaim your right to stay on track and discipline yourself toward a goal, something that you want, because you feel like achieving the goal has some kind of value to your life. So let's look at what's going to be a fairly long list of the enemies of discipline, but then I'll give you a solution for each one. And these are in no particular order, so you can stop the recording and come back and, we'll just go through the list. And these are things I've seen in my clients, especially, in my work, but they're also ones that I've had, and I've had to fight. I'm not immune to the enemies of discipline either, like I said, about procrastinating to make this episode. But it's important. I wanted to share it with you. So we look at the ways to find solutions to the enemies of discipline. And the first one is distraction. While I work with guys who are truly carrying the attention deficit disorder or the adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADD or ADHD, that's a formal clinical diagnosis in the United States from the American Psychiatric Association and their Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. That's the full name. The Bible of documentable mental health disorders. Not everything is in that book. Sex addiction is not, because that's not really a clinical diagnosis. That's kind of a commercial phenomenon. It's charlatanism, really. But ADD or ADHD is a well-documented, evidence-based clinical diagnosis. But for most of us, and I work with guys who have ADD quite a lot, and we talk about how to deal with that if that's really going on. That is a neurobiological condition that really has its roots in childhood and has its roots in neurobiology, in the amygdala of the brain. But for most of us, distraction is less clinical than that. We respond to stimuli in our environment of something to watch or read or listen to or somehow pay attention to, even just daydreaming, that takes our mind off what we really wanted to devote time in our personal time management. It's, shiny object kind of thing. So what's the solution to distraction? It's to develop the ability, with practice, to recognize when you've gotten off track with a distraction, and then put energy and effort into redirecting your attention to the thing that matters in that moment. Oh, look at me playing on YouTube for 20 minutes when all I really needed was to Google something for 30 seconds. Now, where was I? So it's about putting energy into keeping yourself back on track when you realize you've gotten off track in a distraction. The second one is impulsivity. If our lives were 100% scheduled, they might be dull and lack of sense of fun. Sometimes changing plans at the last minute, like taking an unexpected invitation from a friend to do something, is worth abandoning what we had originally planned to do, but only sometimes. So what's the solution to impulsivity? Evaluate the impulse before you act on it. Use critical thinking. If you really compare what you were originally going to do with a thing that's come up suddenly, maybe there are good reasons to go with the new action, like the opportunity to see a friend you haven't seen in a long time who's only in town for today. But promise yourself that you will schedule an actual time to do the thing that you were going to do. And if you've already put off something once, and certainly twice, then commit that nothing else will usurp its place again. If it is truly worth doing, if it's an activity that's truly in service to a goal, you might put it off once to see your friend, but not over and over and over again. And if it's just not worth doing, then take it off your to-do list. It doesn't earn a place there. So that's the solution for impulsivity, is to evaluate the impulse before you act on it, and then you're acting with intention. The next one is inattentiveness. we talked about ADD or ADHD, and sometimes just allowing your mind to wander and lose focus can be a good thing. If you're brainstorming creative solutions to a problem, or you're brainstorming a creative idea for your work, maybe as a designer or as a writer, or thinking of creative options to solve problems, that's when you want to allow your mind to wander a little bit. But the other side of that coin is inattentiveness. It's losing focus. So what is the solution to inattentiveness? If your mind kind of wanders as a bad habit, learn to increase your awareness that, oh, sometimes I do that. I daydream. Okay, now where was I? And then get back to what you were doing, even if you have to do this repeatedly and repeatedly. I have to do this frequently when I'm grading graduate MSW student papers. I teach in the Master of Social Work program at USC, the University of Southern California, and about twice a semester I have to grade a big stack of student papers. Now, I like my students, and I like the work, and I like the material, and I even like what they're writing, but just the idea of having to spend long hours, sometimes up to 10 hours a day, reading papers is a tough job, especially since I give a lot of feedback. And I find myself sometimes becoming inattentive. In the middle of a paper, I'll kind of wander off and play with my phone or play with my dog or something like that. And it's just a way of my mind saying that I needed a little break. But then I realized that I was taking a break, and then I come back to it. I realize I've been inattentive to the task at hand, and then over time you learn to increase your awareness that you're taking a mental break, and then you say, okay, break's over, let's get back to work. The next one is fatigue as the enemy of discipline. If you're not accomplishing something because you get sleepy or just lose energy, consider why this is happening. Are you not sleeping enough? Or not sleeping well? Do you need to be evaluated for something serious like sleep apnea? Sleep apnea will really mess up a person with fatigue and all kinds of health problems. Or did you just stay out partying too late last night? Or do you need to schedule a vacation or have more downtime to rejuvenate in your life? Do you need to work on work-life balance? Are you exercising enough to keep your stamina up? Your heart and your lungs and your blood circulation and even your brain. Are you having medication side effects from maybe a prescription medication that has sleepiness or sedation as a side effect? Do you need to look at maybe having that adjusted in a talk with your doctor? Maybe you're not on the right dose if something's making you too sleepy. Do you need a better environment to keep doing something important? Like, do you need to be in better light? Are your eyes tired? Is that making you fatigue? Do you need to have the room cooler? Sometimes a warm room can make you fatigue. Or do you need to be warmer? It's too cold and you're shivering and you're distracted and you're getting tired because you're cold and it needs to be warmer and more comfortable. Or do you just need to be in a place that's just more peace and quiet? All of these things are in service to reducing fatigue or increasing stamina, whichever way you want to look at it. So, what's the solution to fatigue as the enemy of discipline? Okay, think about what has always revitalized you when you're fatigued. Do you take a walk? Do you do something physical? Do you talk to someone? Can you do a 10-minute mindfulness meditation exercise? Maybe with one of the apps that gives that. The Calm app or the Waking Up app all have timed mindfulness meditation exercises. Can you take a walk around the block? Can you listen to some music and time it? You say you're going to listen to 3 songs, which is about 9 or 10 minutes of time usually. Can you have some kind of reasonably healthy snack? Not a real heavy snack that's going to make you tired after you eat, but something kind of light. Do you have a brief conversation with somebody you're close to, a roommate or your partner or spouse or family member or whatever? Learn to know what revitalizes you, and then do that when you recognize that you're becoming fatigued. Then when you're refreshed, come back to your project with a renewed focus, and you'll probably work both faster and better since you've had a little break. The next enemy of discipline is feeling conflicted between competing needs or even desires. I hear this a lot, and I experience it a lot. You only have so much time, and yet unlimited goals, especially when you have a competition between disciplining yourself to do things that feed your wallet. As my coach Lynn Grotzky sometimes says, Lynn Grotzky is a fantastic therapist and coach near Washington, D.C., and she said our time should be spent with three things. Activities that feed your wallet, making a livelihood. Feeding your spirit with fun and recreation and relationships and self-care, like relaxing or paying your bills or cleaning something or doing something to have a nice, comfortable home and taking good care of yourself. And then the buffer. And she said the buffer, just the bullshit of everyday living, should be kept to a minimum. So what is the solution when you're feeling conflicted between competing needs or even desires? You have to learn to be the CEO of your own life, Chief Executive Officer of your own life. With the adult prerogative that you have, you're not a child anymore, you get to decide how to allocate all of your reasons and resources of time, money, and energy according to your values, priorities, and goals. I talk about this in my book, in Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want. Let's do a shameless plug for the book. My book, Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want by Ken Howard, LCSW, available on Amazon, includes just that little, piece of advice that said you should be spending your personal resources of time, energy, and money according to your values, priorities, and goals. And think about what those are. Which value or priority or goal needs to be applied at any given time, on any given day? What is the tiebreaker between one activity or the other? If you've been working a lot and haven't done anything fun for a while, maybe you need to choose the fun thing for once, for balance. If you've been having a lot of fun lately, but not buckling down and doing things you need to do for work or school, especially to stay competitive or to move the needle along toward a long-term goal like earning a degree or a credential or a promotion or something, then maybe you need to choose to hit the books instead and reward yourself with something fun later. But it's your choice. That's the adult prerogative. It's empowering to learn to control your resources, time, energy, and money, when no one's really looking, like a parent or a boss. When you're little, it's always your parents about, did you brush your teeth? Did you wash your hands? Did you do this? When you become an adult, you don't have a parent looking over your shoulder making those decisions for you. You have to think for yourself. And it's the same thing with your boss. If you have a micromanager boss, did you do this yet? Did you do this yet? Go away and learn to be the kind of worker that a boss doesn't even have to look at you or micromanage you, and everything's done because you've been your own boss and made sure you've gotten everything done that needs to be done, even though your boss, he or she, might set priorities about what needs to be done first. So that's kind of the solution to competing needs or desires, is to apply a value, what is more important, so that the idea of volition is something that you really enact as an empowered adult. So the next enemy of discipline is interruption. If you're trying to do some goal-directed behavior that takes time and concentration, like, when I'm writing an article or something like that, or when I'm reading one, but you're interrupted time and again. It's like somebody you live with wants something, and the phone rings and you answer it, or you're getting some kind of text messages or something like that. If you're interrupted when you're really on a roll doing something that's important that you need to just focus and work on, then it's time to set some limits. And that's the solution to interruption, setting limits. You're not a victim. You're not obligated to let others interrupt you. They don't have power over you. If you know that you need time to focus and get something done. And you don't have to be a total jerk, but you do need to know how to be the CEO of your life and firmly state, I need some time to get this done right now. Let's set another time to do what you're suggesting. So if your partner, or spouse, or a parent, or a sibling, or a roommate, or a friend, or whatever says, hey, why don't you stop what you're doing and do this with me? It's more fun. You can say, I need some time to get this done right now. Let's set another time to do what you're suggesting. I'll be through with this at about 6 p.m. How about we grab dinner after? Or I need to work on this all day today and tonight, but this weekend I'm free. Let's plan something for the weekend. The next one, very similar to the ones above, is about shifting priorities. Sometimes you're doing one thing and being disciplined about it and getting it done, and then something comes up and you're immediately tempted to jump to that other thing, as if what you were doing ceased to be important at all. You get conflicted between devoting limited resources to one thing or the other. The solution to shifting priorities is don't fall for the bait automatically. If you see two options before you and there's only one time slot to do them, then you need to invoke that adult prerogative again and make an executive decision to choose one thing or the other and to stand by your rationale for why you chose that. Often, if we've chosen to do something, we've given it priority, and it's usually more important to complete what you're doing rather than stop everything and shift. Exceptions to that should be really compelling, like emergencies or one-time opportunities, like we said, like your buddy visiting for the day. And those are actually quite rare. The mantra should be completion, not perfection. One of my fun sayings given to me by a previous therapist of mine is, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. That's not really the original phrase, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing it right. But, if you're very hungry, sometimes it's more important to just eat a banana rather than to wait and take time to create bananas Foster out of a gourmet cookbook. It can be very important to simply check things off a list, except for, again, rare occasion when it must be perfect or close to it, like a big presentation at work or planning your wedding or something. It's a really special, by definition, rare occasion. Multitasking has largely been proven a myth. It's okay to say good enough sometimes, except when you're truly doing a shoddy effort, which is also probably quite rare. So with shifting priorities, we have to sometimes say completion, not perfection. The next one is undermining our own confidence. So as gay men, I've found that many of us still, well into adulthood, undermine our own self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem. It's no wonder when we get thousands of messages that we are sick and bad and wrong through a generally homophobic society, some countries worse than others, that makes only very slow progress worldwide. But just because we've been told we're some variation of worthless 1,000 times doesn't make it so. We have to consider the source and challenging it. I'm not basing my self-esteem and self-concept on some bigot who can't get their head out of their own ass. I don't respect their opinion. They haven't done the work to earn my respect. So, what's the solution to undermining your own confidence? It's this: cultivate the critical thinking skills to evaluate whether negative feedback should be listened to from someone whose experience and skills and knowledge and talent and values you respect, or ignored from someone who is a bigot or an idiot, ignorant, or just otherwise unqualified to evaluate what you're doing. Staying disciplined is, at least in part, the ability to keep your confidence in yourself and in what you're doing and to see it through to completion. If you finish your novel and then the critics panic, okay, fine, maybe you do a rewrite or get help from a book editor or you write another work. But don't fail to finish what you're working on, the novel or the play or whatever, because you're afraid that someone who doesn't like plays might not like it. Maybe they don't like the genre that you've written in. Then their criticism becomes irrelevant. So we want to keep our own confidence. If we decide to do something, we hold the prerogative to do that and to stay confident in it because it's our value system. We're writing or we're doing what we feel is important. Somebody might jam pack of I can't think of a band I don't like. What's a band I don't like? I don't know, like ZZ Top or something. I mean, this 1970s band with the big beards. They're okay. I've read some funny quotes from them, but if they had a big concert and the tickets were $150 a piece down here at Staples Center in Los Angeles, I wouldn't go. I probably wouldn't show. I'd be like, no, that's too expensive for a band I don't like that much, and I'd probably be home. But if we went to the Staples Center, we would see a huge parking lot full of cars. We'd see a huge arena packed full of people, and all of those people would have paid $150 or way more for a ticket to see a band that they really liked. So we have to have confidence in what we're doing, because no matter what we do, somebody's not going to like it. So Imposter Syndrome, that's another one. We see this a lot on Instagram and in different kinds of memes. And just this idea, Imposter Syndrome and the inner critic tend to get a lot of discussion lately. And Imposter Syndrome, undermining your self-discipline, is something I think it's related to what we were just saying about self-confidence, right? Imposter Syndrome is this feeling that we don't really have the knowledge or talent or skill or ability that somehow we have been able to get the opportunity to do anyway. Many people have it, and it's just a variation of anxiety. So when we feel imposter syndrome, all we have to say is, well, okay, that's my anxiety, that's my illusion getting the best of me again, especially for high-achieving people. The gay icon Judy Garland, the singer and actress, just a superstar, had a lot of imposter syndrome. She would question her friends, can I really sing? Can I really do this? Am I any good at this? And people would look at her and say, have you lost your mind, lady? Come on, you've played thousands of concerts, you've played, sold thousands of tickets, you've done musical movies. But she'd be like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm any good. And then, once she finally, I think, had some amphetamines and went out on stage, and she was, fabulous, one of the greatest entertainers of the 20th century, rather. She had to overcome imposter syndrome. So recognize that imposter syndrome is a common higher order anxiety. It tends to be something that happens with kind of anxious but still high achieving people usually. But you have to forgive yourself for indulging it, even briefly, and then get on with what you're doing. Part of self-discipline is recognizing that everyone is a bit vulnerable to being a little neurotic sometimes, having these little insecure moments that pop up. But the disciplined person who accomplishes great things, or even just small rewarding things, doesn't dwell on negative moments like that, but recommits themselves over and over to doing what they started out to do. Notice how Judy Garland might have had moments of imposter syndrome, and her friends who have written biographies and told stories said, that was something that she really did. She could be neurotic sometimes. But at the end of the day, usually, not always, she missed some performances, but usually she got her ass out on stage and knocked it out of the park, giving a stunning concert that led to a thunderous ovation. Because at the end of the day, you have to get over yourself with imposter syndrome and get on with it, with what you started out to do, because what you want to do is important. You have to recognize that what you have to give and who you are is important, even if you have occasional critics, including yourself. The next one, very, very similar, is negative self-talk. In the world of cognitive therapy, which I use a lot in my practice, negative self-talk is like a ticker tape or an inner monologue of just bullshit, like we said earlier about confidence. Gay men have made the terrible error of giving credence to the bigots out there and internalizing ideas that never should have been listened to in the first place. Negative self-talk is like a poisonous fertilizer that undermines and distracts from our goals, and it's not what disciplined people listen to. When you think about some of the most accomplished people we might admire, an actor or a writer or a singer or a politician sometimes, or a business person sometimes, we might admire these folks, or an athlete. Think about it. Everybody has people that they admire. I bet you that the people that you admire, in addition to whatever they do, playing their sport or whatever, I bet you they're also disciplined. That's the thing, is that people that other people tend to admire, sometimes in big numbers, can be very, very disciplined people, because that's how they got to be where they are in the public eye, and that's how they got to be good at something, by disciplining themselves, of practicing and practicing. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book The Tipping Point, talks about how it takes 10,000 hours of doing something, ice skating or running track or playing in a band, before you really start to get darn good at it, to get recognized for being good at it. So what's the solution to negative self-talk? Gay men have had negative self-talk because somehow we've listened a little too carefully to those negative voices that say that gay men across the world are sick, bad, or wrong. And we have to say, no, that is their bigotry. That's not our problem. So we have to develop the ability to recognize in our own heads what negative self-talk is, which is putting yourself down. You can't do that. Oh, I can't do this. And become able to listen to what your negative self-talk is. And then rewrite it in your head. Recognize that that's not really your thinking. That's you listening to someone else's mean or ignorant ideas that you don't have to keep for your own. That's like somebody delivering a package to the door. Ding dong, who's there? Oh, here, it's a bunch of negative shit about yourself. Do you want to sign for this package? And you say, no, I don't want to sign for this package. You know what? Return that to the sender. I'm not accepting that today. And then you close the door and let the delivery person go somewhere else. Rewrite the negative statements that are in your head, like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough for that, or, what if this happens? And rewrite those statements like you're a copy editor at a newspaper, and rewrite the negative statements into positive statements that let you get back to what you were doing with drive and confidence. Feeling convinced that what you've decided to do has value, even if it's only for yourself. Even if you're just kind of doing something for yourself that only you will see and appreciate, that's still something that somebody sees and appreciates because you're somebody. The next one is criticism from yourself or your others. So we talked about the negative self-talk, but criticism is a tricky thing. Done well from people that we trust and admire, it can give us perspective and help us identify the weak parts and strengthen them of whatever it is we're doing, with the benefit of someone else's objective viewpoint. Like a good coach for an Olympic athlete, he or she would be able to identify the weakest part of our athletic performance and try and strengthen that and practice it and practice it and practice it, so that a 7.0 becomes a 9.9 from the judges when they go to the Olympics later. Now, criticism, when it's done badly, can sap our confidence and make us second-guess things that shouldn't be changed at all. So what's the solution to criticism from yourself, or especially from others? Learn to discern your sources of criticism. A good example of this might be a novelist who might engage the services of a good editor at a publishing house. If you trust your editor, and he or she says that chapter 6 needs some more dialogue to clarify the story, then write more dialogue, if you trust their opinion. But if someone who doesn't read or like novels says that it's a boring book, that's not the person to listen to. Being critical, bring critical thinking to others' critical thinking. It's important to seek out feedback from the people whom you trust to have the superior perspective, such as taking fitness advice from a skilled personal fitness trainer, or taking health advice from a qualified physician, or maybe a pharmacist, or financial advice from an experienced accountant and planner. But don't take criticism to heart from someone who's really not qualified to speak to that, because you need good information from good sources. And then if you get criticism, about something, I don't like this, I think you've done, I think you can do better. Somebody did that with something I wrote recently. He took a little section and marked the section and said, I think you can do better here. And I really respected his opinion, and so I looked at that paragraph and I thought, okay, this needs work, because this guy's smart and I really trust this guy's opinion. So if he says, can you do better, I look at that and I say, yeah, I can. I'm going to rewrite that paragraph because I think I understand why he's criticizing it. So the next one is pessimism. Doing anything worthwhile takes energy. Discipline is nothing if not the sustained application of energy to a specific activity, toward a specific end. Believing that it's all worth it is key, but if pessimism creeps in and you lose your drive or your sense of purpose, it can stop you dead in your tracks. So what's the solution to pessimism? It's recognizing that sustained energy toward a goal is challenging. But the difference between people who meet their goals and achieve things that might be satisfying to them or valuable to others is pushing through doubt or pessimism or persisting in the quest. Sometimes pessimism is just a notion or a signal that something needs to be altered. If you're getting in shape and you look in the mirror or on the scale and you're frustrated by what you feel or a lack of results, get good advice from a trusted source like a personal trainer. Maybe you need to make changes in your training routine. Maybe you're not lifting heavy enough. Maybe you're not really sticking to a healthy diet plan. Maybe you're overlooking something in the sport of bodybuilding and fitness, which is one of my big interests. And it's the triumvirate of training, nutrition, and rest. Make adjustments where you need to, but don't just indulge the negative thinking because you're tired. Disciplined people take a breather or a break, and then they get right back to it, perhaps with a refined strategy. Maybe not working harder. Sometimes it's about working harder. Get off your ass and put more energy into it. More is more. Other times it's not working harder, it's working smarter. You need a better strategy. And a lot of fitness people will tell you, if an hour in the gym isn't working, you don't just spend 3 hours in the gym. You take an hour in the gym and you somehow do it better. Sometimes you get better results, some trainers will say, with being a half hour in the gym, but being more focused. And you actually get better results from actually less time. So that's some of the solution to pessimism. And recognize that everybody gets tired and needs a break, but you don't let it rule you. The next one is anxiety. This is similar to negative self-talk, but anxiety can be loosely defined as the fear of loss. Either loss to actual life and limb and health and safety, like, I'm walking through a dark jungle and I'm afraid that a tiger is going to come out and eat me. Okay, that's fear of the loss of your life to a tiger who's hungry. That's a reasonable fear if you're walking through a jungle somewhere where there's tigers. But maybe it's a fear of loss that's more psychological, like the loss of dignity or comfort. But disciplined people stay out of anxiety because it requires having to have a crystal ball about the future, which no one, despite their claims, can really predict. So what's the solution to anxiety? Again, it's go back and check your self-talk. If you're saying what if and then imagining a negative outcome, that's trying to be fortune teller. And maybe the turban doesn't just fit. Balance out that statement with a complementary, more positive what if scenario. Well, what if I go to this job interview tomorrow and I totally blow it and I look like an idiot? Well, you have to promise yourself that if you have a negative what if statement, you got to balance it out with a positive what if statement. What if I go to that job interview tomorrow and they're really nice and I really have a great interview with them and they offer me the job and it's a really good move for my career? See, as long as we're in the game of playing fortune teller, we can have a positive what if statement just as easily as if we can have a negative one. You just have to accept that you can't really predict the future. It is what it is. And you're more likely to have a better future if you were relaxed and confident and disciplined in what you're doing. The next one is depression. Depression is a very common clinical mental health syndrome. I see it often in my practice. It's the most common mental health presentation that I see is somebody being depressed. And it's unfortunate, but it is treatable. If you're losing motivation, or you aren't enjoying things, or you're feeling guilty, or losing sleep, or indulging in too much sleep, feeling worthless or suicidal, or even just irritable or hopeless, you might be experiencing a major depressive episode. And you can lose discipline and become vegetative and unproductive in most things if you're actually clinically depressed. So what's the solution? Well, it's a big question. Both medication and therapy, usually both, can help with depression. Depression can be situational or quite organic, that comes out of the blue with no known cause to point to, like a recent loss. But disciplined people realize that depression can happen to anyone. It's like catching the common cold. But they don't just accept it as a bad fate. They seek out mental health professionals that treat people with depression every day and ask them to help you in the same way that they've probably helped many others. And sometimes that's an MD psychiatrist who can give you an antidepressant medication that have been tested at length, through a very rigorous process to work. They have to work or they can't market them, at least, in the United States. And then there's therapy. Therapy can work as well as medication or better. I tend to like a combination because a pill can do something that talking can't, and talking can do something that a pill can't. And you need that interpersonal support. But, depression is not a lack of discipline exactly. I don't mean to say that anybody who has depression lacks discipline. That's blaming the victim, and that would be mean. What I mean to say is that if you find yourself with depression, don't blame yourself for it. Not only, what an idiot am I that I got depressed, as if you did something to bring it on. That's not fair to you, because it can happen out of the blue. But what I think you should do in something like that is not just take it lying down. Recognize that depression is a challenging problem and realize that you can get help. And the people who get help generally have a much better time of it. Either they recover better or faster than someone who doesn't get help. So the solution to depression getting in the way of your discipline is to just, get help for depression as such. Here's another one, ignorance. Now this can be an enemy of discipline somewhat insidiously. We're not accomplishing things that we want to have or be or do simply because we don't know how, or how in enough detail to actually get it done. So what's the solution? When you're trying to do something, think about if you have the information or skills. Skill is sometimes defined as knowledge put into practice to do it. Sometimes people just lack talent. Even if you have the best voice teacher, you still might not make the Metropolitan Opera. That requires a combination of talent and training and opportunity, maybe a little bit of appearance and networking and politics and luck. But information on things that might be important to you is usually available, especially in this day and age of Google or YouTube or books on Amazon, and all the information that's available to us, oftentimes for free, on the internet. So don't feel shame if you just don't know something, or embarrassment. Instead, discipline yourself to seek out the knowledge, soak it up, practice it, and work to adapt and incorporate the knowledge to make it your own. The next one is resentment. Sometimes people lose their discipline to do something because they resent someone else who's already done it, or done it better than them, or gets more credit for it. And this way lies madness. If you decide something is important to be or do or have, that's all the legitimacy or the justification that you need to stake your claim. Even if someone else is doing it or has done it, you still get to make a play for it in your own way and for your own satisfaction. So what's the solution to resentment? Be happy for them. They have applied their own discipline, had their own inspiration, made their own mistakes, and enjoyed their own outcomes. You can't live someone else's life or even be a copy of it. Don't be the next you. A singer might say, I want to be the next Judy Garland. She was a great singer. Well, even Judy Garland said, Don't be the next somebody. Be the first you. Don't try to be them. Just be the best of you. And when they made you, they broke the mold, as they say. You can always use the example or inspiration from others to energize you or refine your focus and your efforts, but it's still your goal to make. And that's even true when people aren't very nice. Some people have gotten where they are because they've been underhanded. Now, I've had this. I have rival gay therapists who've raided my website and stolen my blog titles and rewritten them as their own, but they were taking titles and ideas from my website just subtly enough that they didn't get in trouble for the legal definition of plagiarism. But I knew, and they knew, that they were stealing from me to have what they want. And I just kind of let them do it because they're one step behind me. Nothing good comes of, industrial espionage or trying to undermine the other person in order for your own success. Resenting that is just kind of a waste of time. It's better to just apply what interests you. The next enemy of discipline is despair. And that's similar to depression, but despair can be the complete cessation of work due to the overwhelming feeling that you can't do something, or you can't do it in the way you'd like, or soon enough, or impactfully enough. Sometimes failure is just an education and a guidance to direct your energies somewhere else where they are more needed. But counting yourself out and just finding ways to declare yourself as failed and dejected never leads to satisfying life experiences. So what's the solution? Try to recognize why you're despairing. If you've written a play and the second act doesn't seem to work, even to you, let alone your director or your audiences or the critics, don't wallow in the disappointment. Work to find out why. Is it the plot, the characters, the dialogue, the theme? Seek out people who can lend a fresh perspective, who might inspire you to make the changes that you need. And then discipline yourself to make changes with the hope that sound changes will give you a better play that you and everyone else in the audience can enjoy. Hope is one of the most important components of resilience and adaptive coping for stress. And hope is the opposite of despair. Some people would say pride is the opposite of despair. That's another discussion. But hope is really important. Don't quit the minute before the miracle. If you really need to throw in the towel on something, you'll know, and it won't feel despairing. It will feel liberating and self-compassionate, and it will free you to pursue something else that brings you more joy. Another enemy of self-discipline can be hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure, or indulgence. And that can be immature thinking that lets you get sloppy and indulge yourself in the actual or pursuit of pleasure in the short term that prevents pleasure in the long term. Don't sacrifice the great for the good, and certainly don't sacrifice the great for the mediocre. If you're a student, but you're jeopardizing getting your degree and the profession that will lead to because you're partying too much, that's infantile, and you need to get your priorities straight. You have to really watch when you're indulging your easy side, taking the easy way out too much. And that's different from negative self-talk. It's a realistic assessment of a work-life balance, or a work-fun balance. If you have too much fun and no work, you might not get certain things. You might not finish a school degree, you might not get a promotion, you might not build up your income so that you can buy something that you want. So what's the solution to hedonism and indulgence? Success comes to those who are disciplined enough to know when to work hard and when to play hard and not really mix the two. To everything there is a season. Recognize that you need fun or life loses its luster. But discipline means that you self-regulate your desires and your impulses and your motivations. Your ego and your superego have a place in keeping your infantile id in check, as Freud would say. The ego kind of moderates things, and the superego is our conscience more or less, and our id is just our primal impulses. I want to eat, I want to fuck, I want to, and sometimes, the ego has to kind of moderate between your little angelic superego where everything's always cool, and your id where you're just like a caveman following your impulses. The people we often see as miserable due to their own frustrations and, again, lack of their own accomplishments, things that they wanted, not that others wanted for them. That's key. You have to want things that you want, not what others want for you. And these are often the ones who often insidiously indulge hedonism at all times, not just sometimes, and paid a high price. I'm working with a client on this now who has a lot of dreams. He wants to do something special professionally, and it requires a lot of training and a lot of education. But yet he's been just kind of bebopping around and not really getting down to business. And I've had to kind of say, his indulgence and his hedonism of just party all the time is really getting in the way of his big dream of what he wants to be when he's older. And so we've had to say, how can we kind of balance that? How can you have some fun? Sure, you're young, you've got fun friends, you've got fun opportunities for vacations or fun things to do, but how can you balance that with the kind of discipline that it takes to make long-term dreams come true, which are really going to be rewarding in the long term? So no discussion about discipline and goals and achievement and satisfaction would be complete without recognizing that it's not always up to you. Even people who are actually quite disciplined lose out on achieving things that they want because they were denied opportunity by people with privilege. And, the ones we all know and recognize frequently. Privilege about race or socioeconomic class, ethnicity, nationality, family, sexual orientation, ableness, cisgenderism, networking, politics, appearance. And that sucks. And this is why social justice is a goal of a global society. We're just not there yet, not by a long shot. But discipline is one way, it's one resource and one strategy to fight back against the privilege and the isms that we can't control by controlling the things that we can. We might have to work to get longer or harder or more strategically, but when people from minorities who do achieve, despite not being handed privilege on a silver platter, discipline is often one of the ways that they overcame those inherently unfair but all too real obstacles. That's why discipline is so important to cultivate, because it has an awesome power to help you get what you want to be or do or have, despite sometimes very significant obstacles that you had nothing to do with creating. So think about what's important to you. Allow yourself to hope and dream and brainstorm and imagine. Then, when your head is up in the stars, bring it all down to earth and get to work. Find support from others or from any source you can access. Gay men are told just way too often that we can't because others think we are somehow less than them. Well, fight back. Little by little, discipline shows that the bigots will not have the last word. We will. And we will have a fabulous time doing it. So if you'd like some help in coaching, if you're somewhere else other than California, or therapy if you're in California, because that's where I'm licensed to practice psychotherapy, please feel free to reach out. Either me or one of my associate clinicians at Gay Therapy LA would be happy to help you. The way you reach me is in the United States, 01 I think if you're somewhere else, but area code 310-339-5778. So 310-339-5778 is a way to reach me. Calling, texting. I kind of like texting because I can see it all written down. Or you can email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com. And then visit gaytherapyla.com, the website, because that's where I have a bunch of blog articles under the blog tab of archived articles going back about 15 years. And just other information about who I am, what I do, what my associates do, all of that. because we are here to help guys in California, in the United States, and all over the world, and hopefully it can work out. And for those who might not be able to afford private practice prices, I know they're high because the cost of living here in Los Angeles is so high, and I really apologize for that in advance. But then we talk about ways to get help that might not be from a private practice. So that might be in a community clinic, or or even through all the blog articles and my book. So there's some kind of resource to contribute to doing what you want to do, and that's really important. So, thanks, and I'll see you next time.